Welcome back to the Girl Out of Order podcast. I am still pinching myself at the quality of guests that we are experiencing this year on the Girl Out of Order podcast. And today, my friends, is no exception. Today, I have the distinct honor of welcoming a woman who I actually became friends with a couple years ago in Unleash Her Power Within with Tony Robbins. And when I joined Mic Drop Academy to build my speaking business, I noticed she was in that community. And so I quickly reached out to her and I thought, oh my goodness, she has evolved into such an incredible woman. And so today I have the distinct honor of welcoming my friend and the amazing award-winning author and speaker named Leia Baez. She is also a government communications director based in Omaha, Nebraska. And this woman, she has built a mission of helping women overcome self-doubt and step into her unique potential. As a former journalist with more than 15 years experience, Leia uses the power of storytelling and real life experience to inspire women to build healthier habits, make confident decisions, and lead with purpose. This incredible woman is going to tell you her story, but let me just tell you, it is one of addiction and sobriety and overcoming. She has been sober since November 7th, 2019, and she is such an authentic, open book, sharing her journey of recovery and personal transformation, and to show women how owning your story can rebuild confidence and change the direction of your life. So please join me in welcoming the amazing, the brilliant, and the resilient Leia Baez to the Girl Out of Order podcast. So welcome to the Girl Out of Order podcast, my friend Leia Baez.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, this is a couple years in the making, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's so funny. I remember I was in one of Jess Ekstrom's one of her free, not workshops, what are they called? The challenges or something like that. And I remember seeing your name pop up and I was like, wait a minute. And it went really fast because I think it was on YouTube or something. I was like, did I just see Leah Baya's name? And so then, of course, I went and, stalked you in the Speaker Sisters. I'm like, oh my gosh, there she is. And I was so
Yeah.
happy to see you again, my friend.
I know. I was so happy to see you. And then I remember I reached out because I saw you in this space and I first met you in the Tony Robbins space. I was like, wow, this is so cool. Worlds colliding. And I was so excited to see you over there working on your speaking career. That's amazing.
Oh, and that means a lot coming from you. And isn't it funny how when we're in the weeds, right, and we're just evolving and we're transforming and we don't always realize how much we've changed until we meet somebody that we haven't seen in a couple years and they see it in us. And doesn't it just inspire you even more?
100%. Yeah, I mean, because we're with ourselves every single day, so it's amazing. I love seeing women transform through the years, but, like, especially in the online community, I feel like I really tapped into that after COVID. Like, I'm in a bunch of online spaces, and to see some of their growth, like, just from even post-COVID time to where they are now, like, in their whether it's their speaking career or even just, like, professional development side of things, like, I love seeing how people grow their businesses, grow as themselves, and grow more into their best selves. It's just so much fun to see that.
That's amazing. And you are a shining example of growth, transformation, and really rising from the ashes. So, Leah, if I were to walk up to you on the street, put a microphone in your face, apart from the fact that that might be a little creepy, and I asked you, like, who do you say you are? How would you introduce yourself?
Well, that's a good question. So I would say my name is Leia Baez, and I'm an Omaha-based author, keynote speaker, and communications director. But most importantly, I'm an overcomer. I've overcome some
Mm,
really hard times in my life, really navigating a really hard divorce, custody battle, and an addiction to alcohol. I really picked up alcohol as a coping mechanism in my teen years. Really, it kind of skyrocketed when I went to college because, as you probably know, there's a drinking special every single day of the week at the bars in college.
mhm.
And I probably went to all of them. So, and I just didn't know how to cope in a healthy way ever. And so alcohol was my downfall. And it really took me to some really dark lows,
Mm.
and but had I not done that, I would not be where I am today, transformed, loving myself, all of myself, failures, mistakes, and all. And it's really just been a journey back to who I am, and I feel really grateful that I have this opportunity to, really embrace that low time of my life so that I can really appreciate where I'm at now.
I love that so much. I love that you, when I asked you who you were, you started with a core description of you as a human. Not necessarily, oh, here's the things I've done. Here's what my resume looks like. But it's like, no, at my root, I'm an overcomer. And I already know that we think the same, that we both feel not only a responsibility, but a passion for sharing our own transformation in the hopes that it can shine a light for others. And you have been such a beautiful example of that. And with regard to your alcohol addiction, what I wanted to peel back the layers just a little bit on that, if I may. And you said that you used alcohol as a coping mechanism. Is there something specific that you were coping with, or was it just sort of a general slow erosion of just life coping?
Yeah, I would actually say is a combination of the 2. So, I
Mm.
didn't know so at the time when I was going through my divorce, really rough divorce, I was also in therapy, and it wasn't until my daughter was the same age. She was about 4.5, 5 years old, and, I was going through therapy because I was going through a divorce, and I started having, like, these triggering, like, really bad nightmares of, like, worrying about my daughter's safety, worrying about my daughter, and what I realized through therapy and the help of EMDR therapy, which uses the lights and helps you kind of uncover some stuff, I realized that I had some childhood trauma that I had never dealt with, and I had just
Hmm.
buried for years, and so I had literally 21 plus years of boozing and alcoholism. And I think it just, like you said, kind of like an erosion, it just kind of grew worse because I never healed. I never went to therapy. My parents didn't go to therapy. Nobody
Mhm.
told me, like, when these hard things happen to you in your life, we're supposed to go get help. As a Latina, I think we're in our culture, we're taught to like persevere and be strong and kind of keep going, but nobody really tells you to like get help. So I think
Right.
that for me, the therapy sessions and really uncovering that I had been compartmentalizing all of this trauma in my life as a kid. And I don't know how much you want me to go into. I'm totally open saying what that was if it's not triggering for your audience. But I also just know that once I started uncovering that, just like this weight was lifted off of my shoulders. Like I didn't feel the need to be perfect anymore or like people please like I was doing for so many years because of therapy and because I had the opportunity to recognize what was causing me to feel that way,
Mhm.
causing me to drink that much. And it was just really an eye opening experience.
Well, first of all, thank you for your kindness and sensitivity regarding triggers. Second of all, at Girl Out of Order, pretty much no topics off limits. And I'm happy to put a trigger warning on this episode. But what I don't want to do is gloss over something major that led to something major that then gave you where you are
Mhm.
now. You're free to share as much or as little as you want. Well, I can guarantee you that there are women on the other end of this podcast that can relate to whatever it is you're going to share. And it's important because, as somebody who also was sexually abused as a child and lived most of my childhood in fear and in pain and in secrecy, we become as sick as our secrets. We truly, truly do. And when we persevere, I think you and I are extremely like, we're very hard headed. You have the Latina background. I have the farm girl background where you just rub some dirt in it and you move on. I
Yeah.
became, a super high achiever to cover up the immense pain I had no way of coping with. So
Yeah.
with
Well,
that
then
being said,
we've got a lot more in common than you think then, Christine, because I
I
was
kind
also
of suspected.
yeah, I was also sexually abused as a child by a family member,
Mm,
and,
me too.
it was a great uncle that had just happened to be at my babysitter's, which was my aunt at the time, um, and I didn't tell my parents until I was 15, and so this happened when I was, like, 5 or 6, and what was interesting is I kinda just pushed it down and didn't think about it until my daughter was that age, and I just started having little panic attacks. Like, I
Mm,
was almost like I was seeing that happen to my daughter, and I didn't
yes.
know why I was feeling that way, but then I just started, like, kind of just I knew something was wrong, and so when I brought that up to my therapist, he was able to help me kinda work through that. By the time I told my parents about this, molestation, that person was already dead, and so there was no, like, legal we couldn't do any legal proceedings or anything because there was nothing to do. And it was just really freeing though to be able to realize that some of the ways I acted, some of the ways I reacted were because of, this trauma that I had no idea that I was pushing down for so many years. And I was, like I said, that happened when I was 5 or 6 years old. I didn't get therapy about this until I was in my 30s. So
Mhm.
so you think about all those years, decades of going unhealed or even just not recognizing what the trauma was. Now I just feel like, wow, I feel so free. And I just feel so much better that I can talk openly about it and not get like emotional. I did get emotional for a long time about it. Because I wanted to blame someone,
Mm.
I wanted to like, I wanted someone to feel my pain. You know what I mean? But then now I'm in a place where like, I think that, I went through that and I've overcome that and that's a part of my story now and I can help other people going through the same thing. And so I use that because I not that I'm proud of it or not that I want to like ever have anyone relive that, but because I want other women to know that we can still overcome those things and we can still get through and live a happy,
Mhm.
peaceful life despite the traumas that occur in our lives.
Every word of that, Leah. And what I want to add to that, because my first ever talk on a stage, I told my whole story. And all four of my daughters were online in the virtual audience watching me tell my story, this very painful, what could have been a completely destructive experience as a
Mhm.
child. And when I told that story, there was a little girl in the audience. Her mom had came up to me the next day and she said, I asked my daughter, who was 8, I think 8 or 9 at the time, which speaker stood out to you, sweetheart? And she's like, the woman in the pink, because she told me I don't ever have to be afraid to tell the truth. And I thought in that moment, it still makes me emotional, that our stories matter, not just for our daughters, not just for, but to tell our stories so that other women don't have to be afraid to come into the light is the one thing I wanted to emphasize. And the first thing, rather. The second thing I wanted to also say to you, Leah, and I want you to speak to this is just because that happened doesn't give me permission to make other choices that are destructive moving forward, which is what I would love for you to speak about because you obviously coped in the best way that you knew how, but you at some point, because we all know there's a rock bottom, you at some point said, not another day, not another hour, not another minute. It ends. What happened that finally got you to break through that coping mechanism of alcoholism?
Yeah, so I would say it was, the start of my divorce and a year-long custody battle that was just absolutely horrifying. Having to prove to a court of law that I'm worthy to be a mother because of my
Mm,
alcoholism was so bad that I, put my daughter in danger or I, might have neglected my daughter. You know, I was ashamed. I was embarrassed about that because I didn't want to be that woman. I did not want to be a mother who wasn't present and who wasn't
mm,
capable of raising another strong woman, but where I was in my life at that time, I wasn't capable of that. I was actually a hot mess.
right.
I was, I was drinking so much. I was to
Mhm,
the point of blackout at times. I would then, want to use drugs. I mean, there was cocaine at parties and, wanting to smoke marijuana, like those things, like I don't know who I was. I always joke like,
mm.
did I think I was some sort of rock star or something? I don't know.
Okay, we just have to pause for that moment of comedic relief because I just had the funniest visual of you with like 80s teased hair and you're like a roadie for, or a groupie for like Bon Jovi or something. I don't know why that popped into my head, but you
I
looked
love Bon
fabulous.
Jovi.
You weren't making good choices, but you looked absolutely sexy. I'm just going to say it right there.
Thank you. It's just but yeah, it's just like I don't know who I was trying to be or like what I was chasing. And
Mm,
when I had to go through this really hard time of like losing everything, I mean, I was an award winning journalist at the time. I had a home. I had bought my first home in my 20s. I was married. I had a beautiful daughter. I had what people would say is like the American dream, right? I was on the surface so successful. I mean,
yes.
you could look at Facebook, and I like to call it fake book because I had everything, right? And I put like it made it seem like I had everything, but very few people knew that underneath I was really struggling. And when my ex-husband filed for divorce and wanted to take my daughter and take full custody of my daughter, it was just like this blow to me that I
Mm,
never experienced in my life because it was like this. I mean, it was a complete disruption to like what I envisioned for myself.
right.
Not only did I have to move back into my parents' home because I had no money,
Mm,
I had nothing saved, okay, so I had to move back into my parents' home, but then I had to, like, fight for custody and go like I said, go to court and try to prove that I'm worthy to be a mom. All I wanted to do when I was younger was to be a mother,
right.
and to be a good mom,
Mm,
and I was just really it was a really hard time for me and seriously the wake-up call that I needed to change my life. Now, I will say I moved back into my parents' house and I didn't stop drinking. In fact, I drank a little bit more because I didn't have
wow.
my daughter as much. And I was still struggling, but like quitting alcohol is not easy. I knew that I wanted to do it. I just didn't know how. And so I just kept praying and I kept praying for guidance and asking God to help me because I didn't know how to get help. And, so I was back living at my parents' house. I was going through a really hard time and I was super depressed. And I decided like I have to go do something that makes me feel better about myself because I was like I didn't know what to do with myself.
Mm,
I was like it was like an out of body experience. Like I was crying myself to sleep every night when I did sleep. And it was just a terrible time, but I ended up going back to get my master's degree amidst all that because I knew I needed to refocus on myself and feeling empowered again. And I couldn't do anything at the time without focusing on the negative, what I had done, what I had gone through, thinking bad
mhm,
about myself. And the only way I ever known to like feel empowered is education. And so I went and got my
mm,
master's degree while I was fighting for my daughter, while I was going through all this, while I was still working as a full-time journalist at the Omaha World Herald newspaper. So it was just like this crazy time in my life, so much chaos, but also it was kind of in my now I look back on it, I'm like, I feel like God wanted me to go back home because he knew I needed to be supported by people who love me, my parents.
mm,
And I needed to go back to home base to re-energize, to refocus.
mhm,
And that's where my sobriety journey started. Um yeah, eventually I would make that decision to that I'm gonna, quit drinking completely. And that's a whole nother story if we have time, but, I literally tell everybody it was a spiritual awakening. I had an uncle who passed away from cancer, not long after I had moved back with my parents. It was actually, a cancer that's pretty curable, but
really?
his organs, his liver could not process the chemotherapy because he was a
Mm.
heavy drinker, and he was
Well,
only
that's a
50.
wake-up call. Like,
He
that's a
was
wake-up call for sure.
He was only 59. And so when I was looking
Wow.
at my life and I'm thinking like, I'm in my 30s, like if I only have 20 something more years to live because I was drinking just as much as he was probably, am I on that path too? So it was like a culmination of things. He passed away and then I actually had a dream about him. He came to me in a dream and I just saw this ray of light around him. It was like this white light, and he grabbed me on the shoulder, and he had this really loud, boisterous laugh, and he was like laughing at me, and he just grabbed me by the shoulder, and he's like, "You don't have to drink." And it was just kind of like this, yeah, I don't have to drink because even if it's all around me, like I don't have to do it. Even when everybody I know does it, I don't have to do it. And it was just like this weird moment of like, duh. And I remember telling people after that dream, like, I'm not drinking anymore. And they were like, okay, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Like,
Okay,
yeah, right.
so you have this spiritual experience. I mean, I want to unwind just a little bit. You said so much beautifulness. I
I
don't
know.
even know
Sorry.
where I would dive in. No, no apologies for your gorgeous story. But as a divorce attorney, I'm like sitting here just feeling all the feels because what you were going through while you were navigating the custody journey, while you were navigating your addiction an incredibly painful and not super positive intersection. I can tell you as an attorney. And it's interesting and I want our listeners to hear this. The divorce wasn't the catalyst. She wasn't ready to let go of the alcohol. Moving back in your parents didn't spark your sobriety. Facing the loss of your daughter didn't spark your sobriety. But I'm hearing you say is that these were just blocks, right?
Mhm.
These were blocks in the tower that eventually was built and was strong enough to overshadow your addiction. And what I believe is so powerful about addiction and recovery stories is, and I have addiction in my own marriage. Until you are ready to absolutely surrender, it doesn't matter how many gargantuan boulders fall into your life. You have to be spiritually ready to rewrite your story and let go of the coping mechanism that your brain has one wanting to let go of most likely for years. And you came to that point. You had this dream. You found you proclaimed you weren't drinking anymore. I will be honest, I'm a little skeptical. Did you just stop drinking like that? Because that seems pretty incredible.
Yeah. So I'll give you some more details because I didn't know how much detail to give you. So my uncle passed. I was actually, the dream actually occurred while I was in the hospital and I was under anesthesia for a hysterectomy. I had a fibroid tumor about the size of a giant
Girl,
softball.
are we literally sisters from another mister? Mine were this big. I
Oh
had
my
2 of them.
gosh. Yes. And so
Hysterectomy.
I had to have a hysterectomy because of that. And that scared the heck out of me. And I was like, why is this tumor growing inside of me? What am I doing to my body right now that's not healthy for me? And,
Mhm.
alcohol was the number one thing. Well, alcohol plus then, leading to drugs. But I was just like, I need to change my life. Like I could not be here, I could like so when I had that surgery, which was literally like within I want to say less than a month of when my uncle passed, my dream happened under anesthesia. And the nurses, and I was bawling my eyes out. The nurses came up to me. They're like, that's normal. Don't worry. Like everyone cries when they come out of the anesthesia. I'm like, no, I just remember talking to my uncle and it was crazy. And I got
Wow.
rolled back to the waiting room, the recovery room, and my boyfriend's there and some of my family, and I was like, "I'm never drinking again." And they're like, "You're probably high on meds still." So I'm like, "No, I'm serious. Like, I think this is it. Like, I'm done." Like, I just felt like God had answered my prayers. Like, I needed the message that I needed. I also, like you said, had those building blocks. So, like, when I lost custody of my daughter, I knew I wanted to stop drinking, like that 100%. When I was going through my divorce, I also knew, like, it was time, like, I have to change my ways. But I wasn't like, I didn't know any other way, and I hadn't rewired my brain yet to know that there's healthier ways to cope when you're stressed or you're feeling emotional or you're down on yourself, like, I didn't know that there was healthy ways to do that, right?
Mhm.
So when I was still going through the divorce and emotional as hell at my parents, like, of course I'm gonna open a bottle of wine, because that's what I've been doing for 2 decades of my life.
Right.
My parents were like, "Okay, well, you don't have your daughter. It's okay if you have a drink." But, they were even like, my mom's like, "I thought you don't wanna drink as much." And I was like, "I'm just gonna have a glass." Well, I finished the bottle because that's not in my DNA to stop drinking after 1.
Right. Right.
And so, my parents knew it wasn't happening all the time, but, like, I still had that urge that I knew I had to stop. And so that day that I had that surgery, that was in 2019, I knew that I was done. Like, I just had this feeling in my heart,
Mm,
everything, like, that surgery I couldn't drink anyway because I just had surgery, and so I was like, "This is it. This is it for me. I'm done," and now I will say, like, there were moments after that when I had been sober. So I'd been sober for, like, 30 days. I've been doing great. Everything's going well, but then the holidays hit, which were super
mm,
triggering for me because this is a reminder that I messed up. I'm by myself. My daughter's with her dad on Christmas. I usually have her on
mm,
Christmas Eve. So Christmas Day rolls around, and the first day I just get hit with this big block of like, you messed up. Like, you're not good enough to have a family and all the cute little pajamas. Everybody's got matching pajamas. Like, you don't get that, you know? And so that's the
mm.
story that my was coming, that was filling my mind.
Right.
Like, I'm not good enough, and, like, I'm never gonna be happy, and, all these things, and so I get flooded with, "I just need to go to the bar," like, that's what my mind is telling me, like, "Just go to the bar, you'll feel better." And so I'm, like, emotional, I'm calling my boyfriend, he's like, "I'm on my way over, don't worry." I was like, "We're going to the bar." He's like, "Okay." Like, he just, like, dealing with me, like, "Okay." So he pulls up, and he has a six-pack of Heineken NAs, which I've never had an NA beer yet, and this is zero point 0.0, so there's no alcohol in it. And it was the craziest thing because it was just the idea of the bottle to the mouth that
Mm.
I needed, like, during that moment of stress, during that moment. So I drank one of them, and I was, like, actually surprised it tasted like a beer.
Right, it totally does. It's so
No, and
strange.
it was
Non-alcoholic beers, that's what NA is. Like,
yeah,
weird.
yes, and so I was just like I took a drink, and then I drank the whole thing, and then I was good, I didn't want any more. And I was like, "Wow, it wasn't the alcohol that I needed, I just needed
Mm,
someone to talk to, my partner who was there, who was super supportive, he's still my partner, and but it was just the idea of that bottle in my hand because that's how I coped before, isn't that wild? So,
wow.
it was moments like that of knowing that I can do this, that I kept pushing
Mhm.
forward. Like, anytime I'd get a trigger, I now found healthier ways to cope, so I was doing meditation. I loved CrossFit and weightlifting, so I would do that as a form of, like, de-stress and to get that natural high of, rush of endorphins, and I was doing other things that were healthy when I'd come to these moments of, like, despair, like, I'm stressed, and
Mhm.
that has been, like I know it's like self-awareness, like, when you're feeling triggered, you gotta know how can I deal with this? Like, what are the healthy, coping mechanisms that I enjoy that can help me get through this? Sometimes for me, it was just literally going outside and walking around the block and getting some fresh air.
Yes. It's about moving first and foremost. And I teach this in my identity workshops that I do. I created a tool called the infinite state shift, which is based, it's a feminine version of Tony's triad where it's physiology first, but it's like how I move my body, like getting up and physically changing your state, changing your location, changing how you stand, how you breathe, where your shoulders back, tits up, like
Yep.
I like to say, but also fresh air. Yeah, exactly. Like standing like the superwoman that you are, there is something that shifts inside our physical body when we choose to move, when we choose to
Mhm.
stand with confidence before we feel it, when we choose to go outside for a walk instead of plop down and eat a bag of potato chips. And I'm not here to shame or blame anybody, but what I am here to emphasize is that when you're trying to break a pattern, whether it's at the level of addiction or not,
Mhm.
you have a responsibility to take those 2 millimeter shifts, make those little shifts. And the easiest one is to move your body. So I love that you said that because it's not like, oh, I move my body and all of a sudden I'm no longer an alcoholic. I don't mean to say it that tritely, but it's just something I wanted to emphasize about what you said is you
Mhm.
didn't you didn't just white knuckle and decide not to be an alcoholic. You actually made a decision to replace your bad patterns or your not bad, but your unhealthy patterns with healthier patterns.
Yeah. And it's funny because like after work on Fridays, like I would like clockwork go to happy hour with friends and meet up at the bars and go drink till wee hours till the bars close on Friday. And the
Mm,
crazy thing about it now is I pick up my daughter from school on Fridays and then we go to the CrossFit gym, when I'm done working and we work out together. And it's like I had to create, like I like to say, I had a detour in my life, right? So I was going down this path forever. Well, I had to create my own detour 'cause that was taking me down the wrong way. I had to, like, literally reroute my life and go do other healthier habits, and it was so weird at first because 'cause I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's so weird. It's Friday, people are going out." But then the crazy thing about that piece too is nobody was calling me anymore to meet up at the bar. So I
Oh,
used to
wow.
have all these friends that would be like text groups, group chats like, "Hey, we're going here. Let's meet up." Phone was like crickets, nothing. And at first I was really hurt because nobody was reaching out to me. Nobody wanted me to hang out with them anymore. I look back and I think I know that they did that as a way of protecting me because they didn't want me to be
Mhm.
triggered or they didn't want me to feel peer pressure. But it did hurt because that's why I was like, those were my friends. And I felt like
Right.
I lost a lot of friends too. But I realize now, and my mom put it in a good way. She said, yeah, you might be not get invited to the same places anymore with the same group of friends, but think about the stages you're getting invited to now to pour into people and to help people.
Boom.
I was like, "That is so good, mom,
Mom for the win. What
for
the
real."
heck?
Oh gosh, and I was like,
So
"That is
I
something that
just
I
love that.
will never ever stop thinking about."
So
So,
here's what I wanted I'm so glad thank you, Mom, for the perfect segue because I wanted to ask you about what you're doing now. Thank you, first of all. I honor your journey. I can't believe how much we have in common. And now we're both speaker sisters. So we're going to be taking the
yes.
stages by storm. But you have not only gotten yourself sober, stayed sober. I know that you're very involved in your daughter's life, but you've taken it a step further, girl. You've said, "Okay, my life is" I'm gonna paraphrase for myself, I'm gonna put it in my terms, and you can tell me if this lands for you, is my life is going to be a message, and I'm gonna take that message as far and wide as God will allow me or, how as far and wide as I can. What are you doing now, and how are you weaving in your story?
Yeah, so it's crazy how that happened. Like I said before, I was a journalist for more than 15 years telling other people's stories. Never in a million years did I think I would be telling my story. In fact, I was
Mm,
actually very scared about that because I was ashamed, embarrassed. It all started because I had an opportunity to be the commencement speaker when I graduated from Bellevue University. And
mm,
they posted my speech on YouTube and it went viral. I made the decision that I was gonna be open, and it wasn't I believe I was guided to that, like, by God, by my faith, to open up and share the vulnerable stuff. I even
mm,
had people in my family saying, "Are you sure you want everybody to know this about you?" But I knew that, like, as a journalist, I was like, I wanna hook my audience, I wanted them to feel engaged, and I wanted them to know, like, I was up there on stage as a speaker, a hot mess, because I was going through a divorce, I was going through a custody battle, I was not put together at all. But what I wanted them to know is that no matter
mm.
what we go through, no matter, the failures that we experience, the mistakes that we make, like, we can still be great no matter what. And so that was the message, and it went crazy. It went, like, they posted
Wow.
on YouTube, it ended up getting, like, 6.5 million views, and I was worried about a
Hmm,
few hundred people seeing my message because I was so nervous. This was the first time I'd ever shared my story publicly, and it
wow.
ended up getting millions of views, and I'm like, "Well, I guess God had bigger plans for me, right, than this small auditorium of people." That
What was that year?
that was in 2018.
So
Yes.
2018, so that was before you were sober.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yes.
okay. I'm having a hard time processing that. So you do this amazing speech, you tell your story, but you're still in the throes of addiction at that point. Is that fair?
That's fair, mhm, and,
What do
in
you
fact, I was still working through it, trying and I had bouts of sobriety here and there, but I would, relapse, here and there too, so it was a constant journey of trying to stay sober, I was vulnerable with them. I told them about, I'd failed as a wife, as a mother, my custody battle, my divorce, that life was not perfect. I had to move back into my childhood bedroom in my parents' house. I had no money. I just wanted them to know that it might look like I have it all together up here on stage as your commencement speaker, but
Mm,
life is unraveling as we speak. And I wanted them to know that because
wow.
so many times we see people and we have highlight reels of things, right? And we see all the good stuff, but I just something in my gut told me like I have to be real with them and I have to be honest. And for me, I think it paid off for them too, because not only did they resonate with that, But, I felt free. Like, that was the first time publicly I'd shared that with anybody, and it was, like, cathartic for me, to share that. And so that just turned into crazy because, like, it went viral. So then I had organizations and conferences reaching out to me to be a speaker. And I was speaking everywhere for free. I mean, I didn't know that this could be I could create a business out of this. So once I learned that, then of course, my business structure changed quite a bit. But when COVID shut things down, I eventually wrote my memoir, published that, and now I'm continuing to speak and share my message of hope and how I to answer your question about how I weave it in. So a lot of the times I speak about resiliency and overcoming, and one of my favorite
Mhm.
keynotes is how to get out of your own way and discover your best self. And that is just a testament to how I got sober after a number of times trying, not giving up, but then having like supportive people around me, finding healthy habits, being able to verbally speak about the things that are bothering me to a therapist or to a friend, like all of these components that help me discover my best self. And that has been extraordinary because, I've had the opportunity to resonate with so many people. And what I realized, especially after my speech went viral, was that we're not alone. I had people from like London, Germany, Jamaica DM me saying, my story is your story. Like, thank you so much for sharing this. I'm going through the exact
Right.
same thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one.
You're not only not the only one, you are providing a light so that they feel like they're not the only one. I mean, people ask you, "Why do you do this podcast? You're running a law firm, you're building a speaking business. How do you have time?" I don't have time. That's plain and simple. I make time because I don't know when a story or a guest or something I'm going to say will help that one woman in Bangladesh who downloads my podcast feel less alone.
Hmm.
And it's like, I know you can resonate with this, but it's like, if I can just focus on serving the one, just serve the one person, then the one becomes 10 and then the 10 becomes 1,000. And, we have to share our stories. We don't have to, we get to share our stories because by doing so, Leah, I know I feel like my story not only has a deeper meaning, but any pain or trauma or residual yuck, as I like to call it, it just loses any potency. It's drowned out by the beauty of the impact that we get to make because we are vessels for our
Hmm.
stories. And
Yes.
I see that in you and I love that in you. So
Thank
before
you.
we start to wrap up, I wanted, because it's just too fun of a fact, I really want you to tell us about the time you got to be on Oprah's podcast because I just can't stand having a podcast interview with you without talking about this.
Yeah. So crazy experience. I believe in my heart that it was alignment because, I was vulnerable in my, storytelling. I was vulnerable in my memoir. I just felt like I had to get to that comfortable stage of loving who I am,
Mhm.
mistakes and all, to be aligned to this opportunity. And it was kind of crazy how it happened. I basically, what my daughter and I were both featured on the Oprah podcast, and we filmed in February of 2025. And we talked about parenting and being a mom of a teenage daughter in the social media and digital era, and just how challenging that is for our youth. And
Mhm.
the crazy thing how it happened was this is crazy information because everybody always wants to know, well, how did you get this interview? So I signed up for Oprah Insiders, which was a program she has, and I signed up during COVID because we were all like, hunkered down, and she had
Yes.
like all these great leadership seminars for women, and there was all this great information about, resources for women. And I just always have been a fan of Oprah my whole life as a journalist, especially, right?
Right.
And so, um, my information when I signed up for Oprah Insider was in this database. So they knew everything about me. You had to fill out a profile. So they knew I was an author and a speaker and a mom.
Mhm.
And so I got an email from the producers one day asking if I would be willing to be featured on the podcast. And they asked specific questions if any of this resonates with me. And yeah, by the grace of God, I had actually been going through something right at that time with my daughter and social media. And it was crazy because, I didn't want my daughter to feel left out because she doesn't have it, but I also didn't like the things that I was seeing. And it was a lot.
Right.
And so we got to be on the Oprah podcast with her, and I was so sad we couldn't be in person because I just wanted to hug her.
I know, right?
But we did it virtually, but still kind of like one of those bucket list items. Because how crazy is this? Harpo Productions has actually been on my vision board for the past 15 years because I cut it out of a magazine years ago because I wanted to be in her audience when she still had her studio in Chicago. So I was like, "Oh, this is like I always wanted to be like on her show." Little did I know God was like, "No, you're gonna actually talk to Oprah." So that was just a crazy, wild experience.
I love that.
I 100% believe, it was because of, you know, vulnerability and being aligned to that opportunity at the time.
Amazing. Oh, I could just talk to you for days. You have been such a beautiful, bright light, so honest and vulnerable and real. And I know you have given our community so much value. And hopefully, they've found ways that they can see themselves in your story and understand that, this is not the end. Wherever they're at, whatever they're going through, whether it's big, small, positive, negative, it's not the end. We get to rewrite our stories, we get to author our next chapter, we get to take those proactive steps to build the lives and the identities and the impact that we want. So I appreciate so much for you coming on here and being
Yes.
such a beautiful guest and my friend. And before we wrap up, I have one final question, just a short, whatever comes to your mind. What is saving your life right now?
I would say saving my life right now is this little device called Brick. Have you heard of this?
No, what is brick? What is that?
It blocks me out of like all of this distractions on your phone that
I'm ordering it
I
now.
literally will be, it's easy for me to get distracted. Like I swear I'm like, I have adult ADHD
Oh no,
and
I do. I definitely do.
I am able to block out of like social media, anything that's like triggering or like just like not triggering, but like distracting for me.
This is awesome.
And then you have to be intentional about going to unbrick yourself because then it says, "Are you sure you don't wanna go back to living?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna go outside and I'm gonna go be with nature or something." But it's really
Oh
helped
my
me
gosh.
with my time management because I literally could be doing a million things and instead I will be doom scrolling.
Brilliant. You have literally given me so much value in that one little tool. I've already opened the website. I'm going to order one and you all can
It's
hold me
so crazy
accountable.
how that little thing can help you so much, so
You're such a blessing, my friend, and just keep shining bright. Keep being that beautiful star for Stella. You are my
Oh,
friend,
thank you.
and I cannot wait to be in the audience at Mic Drop Live in Indianapolis, May 12th through the 14th, where this incredible woman is going to be taking the stage. You can find her at leahbaez.com, and please check out our show notes. They'll have all the links for her book, her Oprah podcast, everything that you can find. This woman is incredible. You have to have her in your life. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much. I just love all of your energy. You're so great.